Hey, what up, y'all? Just wanted to ask a couple questions about human nature. Perhaps you could answer them for me. Doubtful that any of us can really get to the bottom of why humans are always looking for an enemy, but it's something that was on my mind and I thought I'd make a video about it because that's what I do. Why are we always looking for somebody to point the finger at? And more importantly, is this just a feature of humanity that we're always going to have? Something that we're going to have to contend with, till the end of time. There's never been a historic time when men were peaceful and everything was just grand. Even in some of the most romanticized versions of ancient history, it was brutal. People took what they wanted, and the only thing that often keeps people from doing horrible things are laws. And those laws, hopefully, are agreed upon by the people. And generally, if the laws are too oppressive, then the people will rise up. So even in very, authoritarian cultures, if the authoritarianism goes too far, the people will generally speak up if they're not taken care of. Not always. There's plenty of, cases of, forced communism, by military force. But I'm just talking about human nature itself. It seems like as an individual, whether you're speaking of the person himself, herself, or their family, or their community, or even their street, their block, talking shit about the block over, there's always a neighbor who's a problem for an individual. There's always another neighborhood over that's a problem for a neighborhood. States, people who live in one state talk shit about people who live in the next state. Now, all of this is just lighthearted most of the time. Oh, you're from that side of town kind of attitude. East Coast, West Coast, right? We know that good people live on both coasts. Good people live in all states. Even when you talk about red and blue states, it's kind of ridiculous. Even generally the, balance is even 60-40. There's a lot of different types of people in a lot of different places. So even when we intermingle with what we would call the melting pot in America here, which is taken differently in different parts of the world as to what that really means. Let's just say that America, the United States of America, is an amazing place to live. And regardless of what the rest of the world might think, the illusion that people may have of what it's like to live here because they've heard America's horrible and there's all this gun violence and, you can't go out on the streets without getting mugged, whatever attitude. It's the same kind of, nonsense as thinking if you go to Portland, you're going to get attacked. There are some truths. You go to San Francisco, you do have a higher likelihood of getting your car broken into. Much higher. But these things are being worked on, and hopefully we can fix our infrastructure and get our, crime back under control. But these are things that can be dealt with. But let's just say for the average person, the average citizen who lives here in the U.S., they just want to live their own life, mind their own fucking business, go to work, come home, hang out with their family, go to the park, go on vacation, whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be a white picket fence. It's not some illusion of, getting ahead of the Joneses, but rather most people just want to be able to exist and feel good about themselves. Like they're contributing to a society that matters, like their tax dollars are being used wisely, and that they can afford to support their family. This is something that's kind of gone by the wayside. And as people aren't able to afford homes anymore, as people can't find a job that is meaningful, they begin to turn on each other. And one of the oldest tricks in the book is divide and conquer. This is a well-known, any adversary you have, the best option that you have is to turn them on each other rather than to spend the time trying to attack an entire group. Because if one group is organized against another group, there's a lot more power in numbers. If you can divide that group, get them cut down to a few, everything helps. And this is, of course, obvious. I'm not pointing out anything people don't already know. Division tactics are nothing new. But I don't think we really realize to what degree this plays into the modern era of internet and the way that we communicate. The fact that bots, not even humans, but bots can now, people can program random answers and responses and comments to videos or tweets or whatever it might be to rile people up and get them angry against each other, to give them the idea that not just their neighbor across the street is dangerous. I mean, these things have been used through history. Turning in your neighbor. Think back to Germany during the 40s. I mean, the way that many of these ideas are implemented are very sly, and people don't even realize it's happening. It's like turn in your neighbor if you smell them growing pot. I mean, this was a big thing in the in the past decades, that people would get busted because somebody would turn in their neighbor for growing weed. Think about it. I mean, yeah, it was illegal, but why would a human being go and turn their neighbor in? Well, they gave rewards. They had, tax dollars going into these programs to bust other people for doing what they did. But neighbors were willing to turn on people they knew because they were told by the law, Johnny Law, that marijuana is horrible. And now looking back on it, it's the same thing with psychedelics. The fact that, oh my God, Bob had acid and he got turned in and went to jail for 20 years or life. Meanwhile, I had a friend that went to jail for like 8-10 years because he had fake acid. He went on Grateful Dead tour with us, and he split and went and kept going. In like Alabama, he got busted or something. And when you think about it, ruining someone's life over a substance that other people were willingly buying, these are laws that are often worth breaking. But in the hippie era, turning people against each other, turning neighbors against people, was a way for them to get rid of alternative thought. And this is what I'm getting at here. We know the Nixon administration wanted to radicalize cannabis and psychedelics in order to knock down the anti-war campaigns, and did a good job of it. And this was carried on through, the 80s and the Reagan administration and Just Say No campaign with his Nancy Reagan. And I grew up during the DARE era, DARE, which to us just, my dad said this. He said, DARE, yeah, drugs are really expensive. I'll never forget that. And it's because we as humans will have always altered our minds. And to turn people against others who are doing so has always been one of the ways that authorities have used to confuse and confound the real problems by convincing us that our issues are related to the people using the drugs, not the people manufacturing even, or the people who have, over the years, better turn my phone down here, the people who have over the years, done a lot of harm to society, the kind of too big to bust drug dealers. I guess one of them would be like Purdue Pharma, right? So in other words, the opiate crisis was, not manufactured in whole. I mean, people are addicts naturally, but when you have a gold seal and a label on a product and say this is safe and effective for all these disorders, and people take it and get addicted to opiates, then it's hard not to say you're basically a drug dealer. Hey, first time's free kind of attitude. And here we are. So anyway, that kind of a little bit off track, but that's what I do best. In the sense that it does matter, because we're always pointing the finger at the wrong person. We're creating these straw man fallacies that, fall apart under scrutiny when people really analyze what's going on out there. And they see that they've been lied to by major corporations, by their governments, by other governments, and by their fellow man. They get frustrated, they get angry, they don't know what to do, and they lash out. And the unfortunate side effect of this is we lash out at each other. And we can't keep doing this. We can't keep calling people libtards because they're on the left, or racists because they're on the right. I hear people arguing that they're trying to take their guns away, and others making fun of people that are afraid of getting their guns taken away. I hear people who are on the side of having drugs legalized, and others who want them all completely prohibited. But there seems to be no middle ground where people come together and say, look, being an American, being free in this country means thinking for yourself, but it also means working with the group. Freedom of speech. That's our First Amendment in our Constitution. And you know what? Something I've found over the past several decades, and especially over the last year, has become very apparent that everyone's all for free speech in America, as long as it's something that they want to hear and supports them. Especially with what's been going on with the wars over the last couple of years, and the way that the rhetoric and propaganda surrounding these wars has convinced people that they can and cannot say certain things. It's not a matter of what side you support. It's a matter of, wow, people say this and this happens to them because of that. Wow, that's not freedom of speech at all. It's pretty ridiculous a lot of the time. And I don't take sides on war. War is a horrendous thing. Humans are complicated, but that does lead me full circle back to fighting your neighbor across the street. The ultimate extension of that is full-blown thermonuclear war. And between fighting the neighbor across the street and thermonuclear war, we have the middle ground, conventional bombing campaigns, civilians fighting for their lives. And when you look through the digital window, the glass window of what's going on, I guess it's a plastic window these days, into what's going on in the world, and you really pay attention and look closely and honestly and earnestly with an open mind and try not to be too biased and take sides on things, you say, wow, this is really fucked up. And I don't know what we can do about it. And you might sit and ponder, like, is mankind just destined to fail? Did we have a program within us that was just self-destructive from the beginning, that we cannot admonish, we cannot banish, we cannot eliminate, we cannot get rid of this dark side of ourselves that makes us always want to fight? Even in the most peaceful communes and groups, there seems to be a wild card. Somebody in the group becomes selfish. Somebody in the group becomes a sadist. Somebody becomes greedy, whatever it might be. And this is, I believe, a side effect of the fact that humans are not homogenous, that we're all unique and all different. This is why, to me, race and gender and all of these ideas of who we are sit even below individualism, which is such a vast difference between two men or two women or a man and a woman. The people, the individuals, every one of you is a totally different person. And you're going to bend your ideas to fit a certain group because you have to. Whether you know it or not, whether you admit it or not, you're going to be following certain values and morals that others created before you, because this is how we survive. The question is, do those morals and values conflict with others? And if so, are they natural conflicts or artificially constructed conflicts that hold us back? And if we can analyze each situation as a unique, little bubble in time, can say, okay, over here, I've got this issue that's going on, and I'm fighting with this person about something stupid. This isn't worth my time. However, this over here is worth my time because my future depends on it, or my economics, or my friendship, my relationship, whatever it is. Being able to analyze each situation for what it is means that you won't find yourself compromising your integrity ever. It's the kind of mentality that says, I would never shoot someone on behalf of someone else, or harm someone on behalf of someone else. Nationalism, for example, can lead to a person pulling a gun and killing somebody who's waving a white flag. And look, I'm not picking on the military. My father was in Vietnam, and the only story I know is when he was sent to a village and they were ordered to kill the whole village of women and children. And they did. And this happened a lot. And this is part of war. What makes humans do these things? It's horrendous. It's horrible. I don't know. I'll never understand it. But even if you're a conscious, aware person, you never know what you're capable of. And I always wonder what might happen when the shit really hits the fan someday. I mean, it's bound to happen eventually, but, you know, how will people handle themselves? Will it be the apocalyptic scene of people running and beating each other up for supplies, or will it be the story of people helping one another, as happens in many disasters? We just can't foresee. It depends on how we see the future. And as long as we're fighting for the present, we'll never be able to build a future that's worthy of our time. And that's my rant for the night. Thanks for listening. Check out my other channels. Check out my podcast. Check out my Patreon. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Peace. Oh, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, nature. Go out in nature and go on a hike. Take a trip up a mountain. Go meet someone. Go on a walk. Go talk to an old friend. I command thee. Links in the description. No, links outside. Peace.